Hey everybody, Andy here. Happy Tuesday. Got a special on a Tuesday, not Thursday. Great to have you. Wonderful to be here. I like to get the week off fast. Couldn't even wait till Thursday. Wanted to have this special show for you today. We're going to be talking about how to get information from employers to know whether they are a good fit for you. If you're here with me live, get in the chat, say hi, let me know who you are, let me know where you're from, let me know what you do, let me know what you need. Put some question marks in front of your questions so I can find them. If you're in one of my programs, please let me know that as well. Use your hashtag so I know what resources you have available to you, and I always like to give you a shout out. One other thing. This is going to be, I think, a pretty detailed talk because there's a lot of stuff that we want to go through, and I actually even broke it up into two parts, so I'll explain that in a minute. So first thing is, you're trying to figure out if an employer is a good fit for you. You got two goals. First, you got to know what it is that you want, what makes you happy. The second thing is you got to know how to get that information and insight from the employer to know if they can satisfy it. That's two goals. But there's an issue here in the fact that you are trying to get insight into the employer's behavior and what they're all about. And these kinds of pieces of information have a tendency to make you potentially incriminate yourself when you're asking questions. So what do I mean? Well, here's a classic example. You want to go work at an organization where you feel like they support your career, but they also really support your life, that work-life balance, and you get a little bit afraid of asking, what's the work-life balance like? Because you're afraid they're going to misconstrue that you don't want to work hard. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, is how does the employer really operate? So that's what we're going to go through today. And this started, I actually gave you about a 45-minute video on Sunday, a couple of days ago, if you're here with me live. So it was a couple days ago. If you're watching this on the recording, you can certainly find this on my YouTube channel about how to start your job search in the right place. And in that video, I talked to you not just about the job search, but I teed it up with how you dial in your life, goals, and the how you go about achieving them and the tools you can use. And I gave you the analogy of how that applies to your job search. And I brought you through this, and I brought you all the way up to the point where I said there are generally, although there's quite a few and everybody's unique, there are 15 really common happiness factors, needs, criteria, call them whatever you want. But these are the things that make most employees happy. Now, everybody's a little different. Everybody's got different conditions in their lives and different desires and different goals. But as an executive recruiter, of which I have been for a very long time, back in 2004 when I started my executive search for Mile Walk, I started to collect insight from candidates, job candidates that we were recruiting on behalf of our clients. And one of the first things that I would ask them is, what makes you happy? What are you looking for? Regardless of what I have available on my desk as a recruiter and the clients that I'm working on behalf of, regardless of that, what do you want? And I wanted to know that because I wanted to understand what made people happy, because generally speaking, if they weren't going to be happy, it didn't matter what I had on my desk. It wasn't going to be a better fit for them than probably what they were doing at the moment. And it also gave me a chance to learn about them, understand what drove them, and gave me a chance to articulate the opportunities that I had in a manner that would resonate with them, so that I was providing them insight into what it is that they needed to know. But you don't always have an executive recruiter facilitating this for you, and so you got to do it on your own. But through about a decade and a half of doing that work, I gathered all those pieces of information that most job candidates were interested in their new employer. So more than 12,000 people contributed data to these to help me determine what those 15 happiness factors are. We're going to go through those today. I'm actually going to take you through them. I've given you a download. If you don't have this, well, you can't read this, but this is the top 15 happiness factors. I've given you a list of them. We've been circulating this for a couple of months, actually longer, but more recently, more heavily, the last couple of months. Maybe the team can drop it in the chat so you can grab it if you don't have it. I'm going to give you what those happiness factors are, and then I'm going to tell you how I would actually investigate them. All right, now before we start though, I want to give you a little a running start with how to think about getting at this at this information. And I want you to think about something that I often say to you, that and you probably heard me say this before, but if you haven't, believe me, this is true. So employees, job candidates like yourselves, you're hired for what you can do. So employers hire you for your skills, but you get fired for who you are. Okay, your behaviors are ultimately what lead to you being dismissed most of the time. So the same is actually true when you, as a job candidate, are picking employers. Employers, you often seek them based on the role they can offer you, what some of the perks are, what it might be like to work there as it relates to your growth and what you think you're going to get out of it. But wouldn't you agree you get upset with them if you do get upset with them because of the way they behave and the way they treat you, right? You might love the role description that you have, but the way your boss treats you doesn't make it a happy place for you to work. Conversely, their behavior can also really keep you there. So anyway, I want you to think about this because ultimately these happiness factors, most of them are related to behaviors. So here's what I want to do. I want to give us I got some note cards. I got a slide here for you today. Got all kinds of goodies, but make sure you grab the download, and I think that will really help facilitate this discussion. But as we get into this, here's what I want to prime you with 3 things. First thing is you got your criteria and what it is that you're trying to discover. Think about what is it that I want to know. So for example, one of those criteria, we'll get into the complete list here in a few minutes, but one of those criteria is boss. People want supportive bosses, they want loving bosses, they don't want micromanagers, and you need to figure out if the boss is loving, supportive, will have your back, or is she or he a micromanager. That's what I need to know. All right, make note. I know this sounds remedial, but this is really important to give you an idea of how to approach this. What is it that I want to know? What would be a good past example of this? So if they do this to you, right? Like, don't employers ask you, tell me about a time when? That's code for give me an example when, give me an example of, right? Don't they do this to you? Isn't turnabout fair play? So just think about it. Well, if I wanted to know if the boss was a micromanager, what would be a good example of that, right? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, what would be a good future situation to put them in to prompt what their behavior will be like in the future if I want to know if they're a micromanager, for example, or any of these others, dozen or so that we're going to go through. So what does this sound like? So for those of you that follow me, and you know there are basically 3 types of interview questions they ask you, what are they? They're tell me about a time when, those past historical behavioral interviewing questions. Or they say, hey, this project that you did, tell me how you did that. That's something specific that you did. Or they say, there's this situation where, what would you do? That's the future. Doesn't this sound a lot like that? Except you're turning it around. Hey, what's good for the goose, right? So I want you to think about this. What's a good past example that would illustrate their behavior, and how could I put them in the future to actually see how they would operate and what their reaction would be? Okay, so I just want you to think about this as you go through your list of stuff that you're trying to investigate. How would I do that? Now, that's what I want you to think about. So just make those notes, take your screenshots, watch the replay or whatever. But that's how I want you to start to think about this. Now, when you're about to get ready to do this, for each one of the items that you're trying to get information for, just try to use those as prompters. Now, I have a job search coaching program. I have a premium program. Inside the premium program, I've gone through great lengths to give the members of that program, I call them boot campers, basically different techniques at how they can elicit information. We've got the opportunity techniques, the investigative and interrogative ones. We've got reverse behavioral techniques. I've got what I call the opposite technique. I've got something I call the disguise technique, because I like to name stuff. And I'm actually going to give you a sliver of the disguise technique in how to elicit this information. And I want to get, so I'm giving you these prompters, but now I want to give you the techniques, and then we're going to walk through the 15 criteria. So I'm going to switch over to a slide here. And I want you to imagine for a second that you wanted to get at information about the boss. Is the boss going to provide you autonomy? Is the boss going to be supportive? Is the boss a micromanager, right? So I use that example. Now, thinking about the prompters, what is it that I want to know? What's an example of that, or how might I be able to put people in future situations? Here's what I want you to, here's an example of what you can do. So the first thing is the boss a micromanager? Now, what I like to do is to remember, one of our goals here is to avoid incriminating ourselves. And I don't want to let the boss know what my preferred style of management is, because I don't want to provide him or her or them a leading example so that they will echo what I'm saying. Right? I don't want to say, Mr. Bossman, I'm a junior person and I need somebody to handhold me. Or, hey, Miss Boss Lady, I'm a really senior person and I don't want anybody, on me each day. I want you to just provide some direction and go. Well, we don't want to give them any of those leading indicators. So you can make statements like, I'm a detail-oriented person and I really love processes. I also like the freedom to create. So you basically have said, I'm all of these things. I have all of these preferences, so the boss doesn't know exactly what it is you're looking for. And then you go on to ask questions, and I'm going to give you a couple of different styles or a couple of different techniques that you can use. This is from one slide in one of the sessions inside my program, but this is basically a sliver of the technique. So I'm a detail-oriented person and I love processes, but I also like the freedom to create. I'd be interested in knowing from you what your philosophy is as a boss and how you would manage your staff. Something like that. This is a really open-ended technique to get them now talking about how they operate. Now remember, they're not sure because of your statement, because you disguised what your preference is. So they'll answer you. Or here's another technique. I'm a detail-oriented person. I love processes and I love the freedom to create. Then you can give them a multiple choice. Do you like to provide oversight and let us run with it? Or are you somebody who prefers daily check-ins or something of that nature? You can give them a multiple choice if you want to start narrowing their responses. Here again, they don't know which one you prefer. So now they're just going to answer based on what they most typically do. Or if you want to really get sophisticated, you can go on to become a little bit more specific in providing them and getting examples from them. So, hey, I'm a detail-oriented person. I love processes, but I also like the freedom to create. I'd love to understand how, could you explain how you work with your staff to make sure that all the deliverables get done on time? Okay, that is a more narrow way to get them talking about how they do something specifically. Or you could give them a multiple choice with options, and this is one of my favorite ways to do it is, hey, I'm a detail-oriented person and I love processes and I love the freedom to create. I'd love to know if you could tell me how you actually interact with your staff and as it relates to the best performer on your team, your most seasoned resource. How do you work with that person? How do you work with the least experienced person, right? Because if he or she's a great boss, they're tailoring the way that they operate based on what the person on the team needs. So although they're managing a team, they're really managing individuals. So these are some different techniques that you can use to get at information that you want without actually disclosing your preferences, which is what you want to do. You want to hold that close to the vest. You don't want to say to somebody, well, I really prefer somebody who's going to check in with me every day to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. You don't want to let them know that. And you don't necessarily up front want to let them know that you want the freedom to create and you don't want to talk to them for 2 weeks, right? So I hope this is tracking with you. If it is, can I get a hey in the chat? Can I get a hey for my team that everything is running effectively? But this is one portion of one technique that I teach inside my coaching program. But I wanted you to have an idea of what I'm talking about when I say I want you to be thinking about what would be good examples to illustrate whether they behave the way I want them to behave. Right? Isn't this partly a reverse behavioral interviewing question that you're shooting back at the employer? Tell me how you do that typically. Give me an example of. Right? So that's where you're going at the examples. What about the future? Interestingly, I got an example. I was giddy this morning as I was looking through my note cards, and I ditched the sample I was going to give you, and instead I swapped it out for the one I'm about to give you right now. Last night, literally, this is like hours old. This is like 15 hours ago. I was talking to Hugo, one of my one-on-one coaching clients, super dude. He got an awesome job with Pfizer because he crushed it in my job search coaching program. And he's been there for, 2 or 3 years. And he keeps getting major companies calling him. And so he wanted to have a coaching session with me because he's going into an interviewing process where they're hiring him or they're interviewing him to build out a quality control group. Major international pharmaceutical company, medical devices company. They do a number of things, and he's interviewing for this position. And as part of this interview, he's got to give a presentation. That's why we were having a coaching session, because we were putting together his presentation. He wanted to know, Andy, what steps should I include? What would I do? How would I go through it? And how would I package all this? We get done with all this, and part of that presentation was building out a unit, of which it does not exist. So then he looked at me and he said, Andy, what happens if, I view this a certain way and I pitch it a certain way, or I go to work there and I make an assumption that it's going to be a certain way, but their view of what this group looks like is not anywhere near what my view of this group looks like? Great question. Simple stuff here. What if I think it's 10 or 20 people and they think it's 2? Right? Me and a helper, right? So isn't that a great example of how we can put them into the future to actually see what it is that they think? So I said, Hugo, here's what I would do. I would ask them, hey, I just curious. Obviously I've run units like this and I've built units like this, but I'd be interested to know right now, what do you envision this group to look like? Just an open-ended question, just get their thoughts. Now, if they're snarky and they do something like, well, hey, Hugo, we're hiring you because we want you to tell us. It's like, that's fair, and I will. But right now, I want to take your temperature. I need to know where your head is, right? So you kick it back to them, and what do you think? What does this look like? What do you envision? They may come out and they may say, we think it's about 5 people. The question isn't, well, I think it's 10 or here's why it's 20. It's, why do you think that? Right? Get their data. Have you ever considered? What about this? What would you do if? Would I be given the opportunity to convince you? What would that look like? What information would you need for me to convince you? And so on and so forth. And that's how you anchor on what their behavior is going to be for some very specific scenario that you are now walking them into the future so you know where their head is. How many times have you been somewhere internally or in a new job that you've taken and you thought you were going to build out this great team, or you thought the deliverable was going to look like this, and it doesn't? Because you didn't investigate that. Because why? Because you didn't put them into the future, and you didn't simulate, and you didn't do the what if scenarios. So this is a great way for you to go about getting at what did Hugo want to know? He wanted to know, what's their view of this? Are they going to be committed to this? How long are you willing to do that? At what pace are you willing to hire those people? What is the What is the process to hire them? These are phenomenal questions that you should be asking. And when you don't ask them, what happens? You walk into a new job, you start working there, and you start complaining that the employer lied to you when nothing could be further from the truth. You just didn't ask them the right questions to know what they were thinking or what would happen if your line of thinking was different than their line of thinking. So you need to be able to do that. All right, really good stuff. Now, again, if you want to know what those happiness factors are, make sure you grab the download. It's in the chat, or if you're watching this on a replay, it'll be in the description. Another thing you can grab is the interview intervention book. It teaches you how to ask questions, and it also gives you 39 great questions to ask the employer, so you can use some of those to stimulate your thinking. And if you grab that little package that currently is now $7 material and handling, you get an ebook called How to Interview the Employer, 75 Great Questions to Ask Before You Take Any Job. So those are some really good assets, as well as the coaching program, which I showed you one of the slides from one of the sessions. All right, let's go into what these happiness factors are. And I'm going to give you a little insight into the line of thinking of how I would go about getting that information. All right. Number one, I'm going alphabetically. Okay, so if you've got the download, this is the sequence that the happiness factors are in, and they're alphabetical, so this is not order of importance. All right, appreciation. I want to know if they will appreciate me. Now, appreciation comes in different forms. I just want a pat on the back and recognition and some respect. Some people want the corner office. Some people want the money, the bonus, the stock, right? Perks, spiffs, this, that, travel first class, whatever, right? But appreciation, you need to dial up what appreciation looks like. But what I would do is I would memorize this word, recognize. So you need to start down a path of how do you recognize your employees? And I would start there. How do you recognize your employees? Now, they don't know if you want money, title, corner office, first class tickets, or whatever, right? How do you recognize your employees? What happens when? What happens every August when you do annual reviews? Then keep going, all right? Then dig. Right? Don't let them skim. You anchor, you sink your teeth in like a dog with a bone, and don't let them get off that subject until you have exactly what you need. All right? So how do you recognize your employees? That's the way I would get that line going. The atmosphere of the place. Now, okay, before all you start yelling about COVID, just atmosphere. Okay, like working in an office is not completely dead. All right, there's still offices. We still go to them. Sometimes we go every day. Sometimes we go once a week. Sometimes we go once a month. Sometimes it's 50-50. But there's an atmosphere and an energy inside the office. People want to work in a good environment. Or even if they work from home, what's the atmosphere or interaction like? This is something that you can observe if it's something physical. But it's also something that you can ask about. And I would ask specifically, if you're on a Zoom or if you're on a phone call, if you are given an opportunity to go into the office, which most of you should be, you don't need to ask these questions. You want to observe this stuff. You want to walk the halls. You want to tour. Do not. Here's a big mistake. You walk in, you ride the elevator up, you go to reception, the receptionist walks you to the conference room, they interview you, and they walk you out. Don't do that. All right? Don't let them get away with that. While I'm here, I'd love to walk the hall. Right? Can I see what the place looks like? I don't want to just see the floor where the product development people are. I want to go to the sales department too. Where the accountants sit. Where the executives, are they on the same floor or are they on the top floor? All that stuff matters. I worked for an organization. We had, in the main office, in the headquarters, we had 2 full floors all the way around. Big tower in the Chicagoland area, and we had offices in many different cities in the U.S. as well as internationally. And I was at the headquarters, and I was on the executive team. and we had a meeting about where our offices should be, meaning, Andy, your office, where do you want that? I said, where do all of my people sit? It's not like, don't think that that's a natural reaction. Like some people, like executives are on the 20th floor. Everybody else is on, 12 through 15. No, I want my desk closest to where the staff comes in and out when they're in between, assignments, or they're just copping a squat in the office, right? So we made sure that people sat near the teams, that kind of stuff. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. All right, number 3 and 4 were autonomy and boss. Well, I just gave you that in the slide. So going back to what I was showing you here, this is, 3 and 4, autonomy and boss. This is the kind of stuff that I would be going through. How do you work with? Make them go through both examples, least experienced, most experienced. How do we make sure that we're meeting deadlines, and so on and so forth. So that's 3 and 4. So we touched on that. And number 5, challenge. Okay, love this one. How many of you would say, I need to be challenged, I want to grow? Okay, that's good, that's cool. Except that if you say something like that to yourself in an interview, I might be thinking, well, you Xerox 10 things a day. I want you to Xerox 100. That's a challenge, right? Is that the kind of challenge you want? You're a salesperson. You got 10 accounts. I'm going to give you 100. Is that what you want, actually? Is that the challenge you want? You're the VP of sales. Do you want to be the VP of sales and marketing? Is that the kind of challenge you want? Certain challenges are desirable. Other challenges are not desirable. Okay, now you need to be clear. I want this kind of challenge, not this kind of challenge. I want diversity in function. I do not want more of the same. I'm doing a triathlon. That's a challenge. It's hard. Like I'm a runner. I could run a marathon, which is farther, or that's far, or ultra marathon, I guess. Right? Or I wanted to challenge myself by doing different disciplines. That was the kind of challenge I wanted. I didn't want to run farther. I wanted to do more things. Same kind of thing in business. So you need to be really clear. So one of the ways I love to get at this and start this discussion is, how will this role challenge me? Here you go. Based on my background. Based on my background, which we've been talking about and which you should know because you read my resume. How do you think this role will challenge me? Don't tell them what kind of challenges you want. Make them tell you what they think the role offers. Well, you get these assignments and then we're going to make the assignments bigger. I don't want bigger assignments. I want more different assignments. I want a wider portfolio. We're going to make your unit bigger. No, I don't want my unit to be bigger. I want it to be more diversified. This is really important. I know I'm making a big deal about this. So what did you do here? You didn't tell them what your preferred challenge is. Okay? So this is really, really important. I cannot stress this enough. Disguise everything when you're talking this way. When you're looking to elicit information, they will give you what they think is so great about it, which may or may not be what you think is great about it or not. Okay? Collaborative. Andy, is Mile Walk a collaborative organization? Sure. We talk a lot. We have Zoomers. If we had an office, I'm sure we'd be eating lunch together and this and that kind of thing. But that doesn't necessarily give you an example of how we're collaborative. Collaboration has a connotation of being a diverse set of ideas coming together to collaborate into other ideas or solutions or whatever, and then being carried out and implemented. Taking into account in a great way, not in an exhaustive way, other people's ideas and opinions. Okay, what is a great example of that? Can you tell me about a time when you supported a new, or I used this just for brevity, unliked idea? I might not ask it that way, but what you're trying to do is put the boss, put the manager, put the team in a position to tell you when they supported ideas that they were either not completely sure about, but maybe the team was emphatic about trying it, or they were trying things that they weren't sure were going to work, but they were creative enough to go and do them to see. Right? Marketing is testing, and in order to test, you need different variables and different solution types. So, can you tell me about a time, Mr. Bossman, when somebody on your team came up with an idea that you really didn't love, but you gave them an opportunity and supported them in designing and implementing it? Right? Allocated resources. That's open and welcoming and collaborative. Give me an example. They should be able to yank one within seconds where they did that. Because what? If they otherwise are not able to, then they are not what? Collaborative. I don't have to think back further than a day to come up with an example on any given day. So this is really important. Don't ask them about their philosophy on collaboration. They're going to give you a textbook response. They're not lying to you. In their own mind, they think they're right. That's the truth. That's how I see the world. Except in practice, if I go into a meeting every time with the boss and every time we come out, we're just doing what you say, that's not collaboration. That's dictatorship. Right? So that's a great one. The commute. Now, observe this and know what your flexibilities are. Flexibility is one we're going to talk about down the road. But this commute, it takes in several factors. Is it planes, trains, and automobiles? Is it walks? Is it a train and then a 1.5 mile walk? Is it I got to come in every day? Right, so that's something that you can observe. Number 7, comp and benefits. This is going to be very, very specific to, right, what is the offer going to be? You are not investigating this until you have an offer in front of you. And then when you have the offer in front of you, then you are asking questions related to, I want to understand this more in more detail. The line of questioning does not occur in the beginning of the interviewing process when they say, we think this job pays 75 to 85, right? That's not you getting information, and that's not you asking questions. You just ignore that until the end when they put the offer in front of you. So that's going to be something that I've given you umpteen hours of tactics on in my salary negotiation stuff. How about this? Contribution. How will my contributions attribute to the goals? Don't ask if my contributions matter. Don't ask what they think my contributions are going to be. Just ask them, how does this role and the outputs contribute to the corporate goals? Based on their attribution and the relationship they draw between what you produce and why it matters will tell you how important you are to the company. This is moving a pawn off the chessboard so that when you get to the negotiation table, you're going to give this back to them. If my contributions matter to this degree, then the value of that contribution is X, not Y, right? Chess, not checkers, okay? So you want to make sure all you're doing is you're collecting data to use later. Value, okay? Next one, culture. Okay, I just got done telling you about, 30 minutes ago that I gave you a video the other day on how to start your job in the right place. Culture is an item, very important, except that culture in and of itself is not a need, right? The adjectives which describe the culture are the things that you need to get at. So for example, collaboration, collaborative environment, is a cultural characteristic embodied within this list. But if you go to the video that I just showed you the other day, how to start the job in the right place, and how about this, tell me I don't love you, go to the 38-minute mark exactly, and I show you the top 20 cultural adjectives used to describe the traits and behaviors of an organization that are the most popular ones. Go there, look for that list, use that list for your list. Okay, flexibility. How about this? You want to know, it just goes to autonomy. There's tangents here. There's coming and going. There's, am I operating in an adult environment? Do I have to come into the office every day? What happens if, right? Describe the setup of how employees get their work done. How do they get their work done? What do you mean? Where do they work? How do they do it? Day in pods? Day at home? Day in the office every day? Just what is it? Tell me. Well, it's different for each person. Describe it to me. genericize it. These salespeople are always on the road. Product engineers are always in the cubes next to each other, or they're in the SWAT room. What? Just tell me, right? They know nothing about your preferences. Describe to me. I didn't tell you that I want to work from home. I didn't tell you that I want to work in the office. I didn't tell you that you needed to give me, pay for my taxis. Just how do they get their work done, right? Get them going down that road. And then they may ask clarifying questions. That's okay. You respond. All right, growth. What potential opportunities are there for this role? Well, the sky's the limit for you. You, as an engineer, you could go into the center and support. You could go out with the development teams, the integration teams. You could be a pre-sales engineer. You could be a blah, blah, blah. Great. Tell me exactly where people on this team, my predecessors that have moved within your organization, where exactly did they land? Exactly did they land? Okay, not where might I want to know that. But now I want you to give me examples of people just like me and where did they go? How many went to that unit? Why so many? Why did so many go to that team? Why are so many in the center? Right? Like that kind of stuff. Why aren't there more sales engineers? We tend to get them from the outside. What if your aspiration is to be a sales engineer and they don't think that internally that they're cultivating skills that make you good for the pre-sales side? Just an example. Where specifically? What is that? That's data. Then what do? You read the data and then you go from there, right? Same kind of thing as before. All right, what am I on? 13. People. Observe if they're open, welcoming, and fun. How they behave in the interviewing process is usually an indication of what you can expect when you work there. Now, some of you come to me and you say, well, Andy, I don't know, they were kind of a wet mop. Then they're a wet mop. Well, they seemed really nice and open and welcoming. Then they probably are. Okay, this is true. They don't usually change their spots? But this is something that you need to observe. You can look at their facial expressions, right? You can look at the way they sit. Do they lean into you? You can think about how did they greet you? You can think about when you ask a question, do they freely give information or are they close to the vest? These are all consistent behaviors that will occur. Okay? So, observe. Number 14, the role. Okay. You need to assess their interpretation of what success is. So one of my favorite questions that I put this out years ago, right? If I was to take this job or anybody was to take this job, what would success look like in a year? Now, they have to know this. Each person you interview with has to know it, because they may have a different interpretation of what success looks like. If you find yourself getting many variations of what success looks like, that's bad. Now, I'm not talking about, I'm the internal customer you support, so my version of success of your role is to be responsive to my needs. Great. Your boss might say, yeah, my interpretation of success is you putting processes in place so that you can be responsive to their needs. That's the same, right? That's one to the next to the next. Okay, right? Filling in the puzzle pieces, or no, they think you need to be going into new markets, and this one needs to be thinking, no, you should only be working the strategic accounts and try to milk out all the money from people who are already your customers. That's bad. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. You need to make sure that you know what their interpretation of success is. And 15, travel. So, travel. How much travel is there? It says 50%. 50% travel is you're out every week from January through June. You're gone every week. And then from July to December, you're home. That's 50%. Or you leave Monday morning, you come home Wednesday night. That's 50%. give or take, right? So what's the travel look like? What's the travel patterns? Is it local? Am I going to the different plants? Am I getting on a plane and I got to fire up the passport? Is it, oh, I just got to, I'm just crossing the state lines? Am I driving? Am I what? Like, you got to assess this if travel is part of your job. So these are the 15, and I want you to make sure that as you the things I want to recap here are as you go after those 15. What do I want to know? What's a good past example of this? And what's a situation I could put them in that would give me the information that I want to know about how they think and will behave? You do these things. Now, I'm not going to recap all 15. Grab the download. This is free. It's still in the chat there, or it'll be in the description. But so if you want to complete this little mini 2-dayer thing, check out the video on how to start your job search in the right place. It's about 45 minutes, and then this is probably about another, 40 minutes or so of once you got the stuff in order. You're going to put your little tool bag together, and part of your tool bag is going to include these questions, but these questions need to be in alignment with the things that are important to you. Every time you question an employer, there's 2 things you are always trying to get. Is this a good company? And is this a good company for me? These are not the same, right? They need to be a great company, a leader in their space, offer you nice opportunities, right? Financially sound and all that. All that's great, but they might not fit you, your personality, the behaviors you want, what's important to you from a cultural standpoint, and so on. So every question and line of questions needs to be designed so you are eliciting both of those things, or all of those things at the end of the day. And one other thing, as a kind of a parting note, you may not get to ask all these questions in one interview. You probably won't, right? So it isn't about asking everything you need to know in one interview. It's think about your interviewing process as an entire suite. The whole recruitment line is about all the interviews you're going to take, right? From the screening with HR or the recruiters, maybe an early visit with the hiring official, maybe there's some kind of technical screen or subject matter expertise screen or whatever you want, domain expertise. Maybe there's some get to know the other people. Maybe there's a little panel interview in there. Maybe there's a presentation. That's a whole bunch of stuff, whole bunch of time that you have. And what you're trying to do is get all your questions answered over the course of the process. It's not to get them all asked in one session. And then you need to prioritize those. If you want more on this, grab the interview intervention book, or better yet, join the job search coaching program. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed that.